Hello and welcome to the show. I'm JJ Flazanes, your host. Thank you for downloading today's episode. If you are downloading today's episode, the day it is released, it is Tuesday, September 24th. So, of course, I do have some announcements that are time sensitive. The first one, since we're talking about intermittent fasting today, it's going to be part of the conversation in the Transcending Menopause webinar that I'm doing. And that is Tuesday, October 1st. If you are interested in coming to that webinar, I am giving some free gifts if you come live. Everyone, however, is going to get a free gift when you sign up for the webinar, because today's show, Intermittent Fasting, Jeannie has very graciously offered us a 2-page document all about fasting, how to set yourself up for success, why you'd want to do it. So you listen to the show, and if you want to get even more information to help you out, to get you started, you can come on over to jjflazanes.com/fasting, FASTING, jjflazanes.com/fasting. And you can grab that document, or you can go to jjflazanes.com/menopause, sign up for the live webinar on October 1st, Transcending Menopause, and you'll also get that free document just by signing up for the webinar. You'll also get the recording of the webinar if you can't come live, but I've got some awesome free gifts for those of you that do attend the webinar live. So again, that's Transcending Menopause, because the last time we did a webinar, I had health concerns and questions, which, of course, one of the first secrets to releasing resistance has to do with the physical body. And there is a direct correlation to your physicalness and your manifestations. And because of that, it led to all kinds of very specific questions I didn't have time for on the manifestation webinar. So this is 100% going to be diet, exercise, hormone, rest related. And then you'll see how it translates over to being in a better frequency and vibration, to have better relationships, to just to be in a better mood, to attract better things. And that's, again, jjflazanes.com/menopause to sign yourself up for that. I'll also mention that we are going to be doing stuff around diet, weight loss, body image, body shame at the Manifestation Bootcamp, and that is October 11th through the 13th. And again, like I've said a couple of times already on the show, please do not let money be the reason why you don't come. I will not be doing another Manifestation Bootcamp. That's one of the reasons why I didn't do a virtual ticket this time. So it is one and only, one and done. So if you want to come play with us, I can help you make it happen. I just don't want you to think I'm going to be doing it every year, because as you see, I grow and change, you guys grow and change, and I want to see what works best for everybody. So right now, this is it. This is the only manifestation challenge, and I will help you get there. Reach out to me, jj@jjflazanes.com. Now let's talk about Jeannie Peters. She's been on the show a million times. And actually, that is one more thing I want to tell you guys. I have recently put up another show. It's actually the archived episodes of Fit to Love. So if you have only found me in the last 6 months or a year, or heck, even 2 years, I did about 350 episodes that were audio and video on the Fit to Love podcast. And if you go to Fit to Love for some of those earlier episodes, you can't get them anymore, because iTunes only lets you put up 300 at a time, and it basically makes it impossible for you to find the earlier episodes. Well, I have fixed that by putting up a channel that is literally the Fit to Love archived episodes, audio only, 1 to 300. And that is up right now. So if you type in either JJ Flazanes or Fit to Love archive, or come on over to my Facebook page or message me, I will link you to it. And there will only ever be 300 episodes on there. And some of the first shows are really good for those of you that haven't listened. There's a lot of fitness and health related things. There's relationship things. There's spirituality. A lot of law of attraction stuff is back there. So again, please check out the Fit to Love archive show, 1 to 300. All 300 are not up yet, but they will be by November. I can only do like 37 at a time, maybe 40. So obviously I have to wait every month. And plus that's enough content anyway. So after November, they'll all be up and it'll just be there. So I appreciate if you would go subscribe, maybe rate and review, especially those of you that are fans. I would appreciate a positive review. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Let's move on to today's show. So Jeannie Peters has been on a million times, just not recently. She is a healthy aging expert with a mission to help women and men feel more vital energy through the healing power of whole foods and lifestyle medicine. In practice now for 40 years, she specializes optimizing women's hormone health, digestive and thyroid disorders, and how to break through weight loss resistance. She co-founded the Nourishing Wellness Medical Center with partner Dr. Alan Peters, who specializes in bioidentical hormone health and homeopathy for men and women. She was voted California Dietitian of the Year by her colleagues for her nutritional expertise and was recently certified in clinical homeopathy. Welcome back to the show, Jeannie.
Hello, great to be here.
So it's been a while that we've done a show on nutrition. I believe it's probably been close to, I don't know, maybe 6 or 8 months. We were doing some stuff before the next big step about the connection of gut health and brain health and our moods and things like that. And we're going to get to that a little bit later. Jeannie will be back to talk a little bit more in depth about that for those of you that might deal with some gut issues or some brain chemistry issues or some depression.
Yes.
Those things, right?
Yep, I'm looking forward to that.
Me too. That's a longer conversation. Today, we're going to focus on sort of a buzz fad, if you will. It's not really a fad. There's science, but I'm just saying that because it's sort of the latest, greatest thing people are talking about and doing. And I just want to put to rest some of the science behind it and take it out of the category of a starvation diet. And that, of course, would be intermittent fasting. So Jeannie, why don't you catch us up on the science and the progression, the studies that people have been doing about intermittent fasting and how we can use it, how to best do it, and what dangers, and we'll go step by step, what dangers there are, if any, in applying some of this stuff.
Well, I think a good place to start with intermittent fasting is it's just time restricted eating. You know, you're going through periods where it could be 12 and 12, you're eating for within a 12-hour window, and then you're fasting for 12 hours, or it could be 16 and 8. There's many different intervals that people will use. But here's the thing. We would have never, ever, ever arrived here as human beings if we hadn't learned how to adapt to periods when we had no food. So there's nothing really dangerous about it, in the sense that our bodies are actually quite capable of being able to handle fast. We've had patients in our practice who have gone for a 24-hour fast. We've had people that have gone for 48-hour fast. As you know, you and I have both done the fasting mimicking diet. I mean, we're animals that are quite capable of fasting. And I think a lot of the concerns that you bring up are maybe things that are not necessarily science-based. They may be more just out of fears that aren't really logical. So I want to just point that out, that fasting is actually, many cultures around the world use it as part of their religious practices. It's not something that we're not familiar with. So it's just that we live in a time where there's just unlimited amount of food, 24/7. So the idea of going on these fasts can seem a little bit scary, or maybe we think that we're going to lose muscle, or that we're going to get skinny, or that we're going to, get weak. So let's put some of those myths to rest.
Well, you hit it on the head. That's exactly where I was going with it. I remember years and years ago, one of the nutritionists that I kind of went and followed and studied in her courses and got certified back then in her way. And we're talking about 1997, 1998, right? So the research then wasn't what it is now. And I remember hearing her talk about basically us going into ketosis or going into a place where we would have to use like a starvation into using our muscle tissue as energy and therefore decreasing our metabolism. And so that was definitely one of the fears that had come up in the beginning of this because of, what I was taught almost 25 years ago. So let's talk about that science and how we won't be losing muscle potentially.
Well, I think, the key thing is that we're not talking about like a keto diet at this point. We're just talking about the idea of giving your body a break and not eating. And there's just so much evidence right now that our bodies love rest. I mean, the body loves getting good sleep, but the body loves rest where we can really let our digestive system take a break. And so some of the metabolic changes that happen when people do some style of intermittent fasting, whether it's 8 hours where they go without eating, 12 hours, 16 hours, maybe even 24 hours. I mean, there's just so many benefits of the body and the brain. So I don't know if you want to get into that, but that's, I just think, again, it can be a very effective strategy to like improve people's energy levels, help people get more comfortable with hunger, the mind hunger versus body hunger, can help them to improve their insulin, their liver. The liver increases insulin sensitivity when we take breaks, for sure the intestines, because you're just reducing the energy that you're taking in. So inflammation in the gut can go down. It can improve when you do refeed, you just have more available enzymes, because even those enzyme stores can actually be rebuilt during these periods of rest. The heart rate improves, so the resting heart rate typically goes down. People can drop their blood pressure. You get more comfortable, JJ, with using your own fat stores for energy. So many of us never get there because we're so we're eating based on a sugar burning metabolism, meaning that every couple of hours we're eating something again. And so the body really never gets a chance to tap into your fat stores as an energy source. So there's a lot more benefits I can suggest, but those are just some of them. Increasing muscle sensitivity or insulin sensitivity within your muscles. But I think those are some of the important benefits that people would get when they take a break from eating.
Is there a danger in doing it too long? Or is there, and I know I've heard that studies from 10, 15, 20 years ago that also link sort of like eating less calories than you supposedly need as increasing longevity. So I remember hearing all about that maybe 10, 15 years ago. But is there a detriment? Like I remember when I would be working with people who had come off of, let's say, the Atkins diet, which is sort of the keto, but sort of not. And we'll talk about that more in depth at another time. This is not the show for that. And Jimmy Moore was on the show and we did talk a little bit about that. But I would see this dramatic increase from people that were doing the Atkins diet, and they would lose a lot of weight rapidly. And then they would gain it back and more every single time. And so what seemed to make sense was possibly they were losing muscle and their metabolism was slowing down. And of course I wasn't following any studies of their behavior. So possibly they went Atkins and then they went super carb when they came out of it or something. I don't know, but it was over and over that it wasn't just they gained the weight back, they gained more weight back. So let's speak to that.
Yeah, I think the key thing I want to just say that is critical when you're doing intermittent fasting is that you still have to focus on nutrient-dense quality food. And you want to, still be giving yourself good rest and, living more in rhythm. So when people sometimes go on some of these diets like you're talking about, where maybe they were extreme in the sense that they were cutting their carbohydrates back, like on the Atkins, basically you got a salad a day. I mean, there wasn't a lot of nutrient density from other vegetables. So yeah, there's absolutely studies now that show that if we restrict our feeding too dramatically, that sometimes what will happen is that you'll be more likely, because of the hormonal changes, to have hunger and cravings when you refeed. So that's why I think intermittent fasting has to be something that is really individualized. And you have to try it and find out just like how the protocols work for you. Because I've been a nutritionist for 40 years and I've tried every kind of diet and protocol that's out there just because I want to be able to know the physiological and the psychological benefits and maybe some of the downsides from trying what people are doing. And so I've tested intermittent fasting for myself over a 2-year period. So I can see, and I'm an athlete, so that I'm somebody that pushes myself pretty hard as a competitive triathlete and master swimmer. So I've done things where I could actually say that for me, some aspects of intermittent fasting don't work very well. It's too taxing for my body, but others work just fine. So I think, again, a lot of what I want to say is put it into the context of, how can you make it work for yourself, and to assure people that when you do refeed, you want to be refeeding the highest quality food that you can. Back then, the Atkins diet of, let's say, the 60s and 70s is a lot different than like a keto diet that's being promoted now.
Well, let's go back and talk about, now that we've kind of handled some of the myths about risks or
Yeah.
downsides to it, right? And I would agree, we are full of, our culture continually finds ways for us to be more efficient in what we do in life, but it means our bodies are moving less. And we have so much food available, and now we're eating more. So we're really moving less and eating more still because of
Yes.
technology, right? And people aren't engaging and focusing on the right exercises, which we'll talk about at another time, for the most part. And they're not doing what you're doing, or they're not having that balanced hobby slash athletic experience or regimented working out. They think it's sort of a luxury to go to the gym, or if it's grueling. So let's look at why we talked about rest in the beginning of the show and why it's beneficial for our bodies to go into rest. And you gave sort of the little sprinkled list of all the different benefits, but let's talk about why it works. Why does it work for my body to heal
Great.
in different
Yeah.
ways when I remove food for an extended period of time?
I think it's a great technique for training your body's metabolism to learn how to use your body fat as a prime energy source. I think that's, beneficial because you can become more metabolically flexible, in the sense that, let's just say that you had to get on a flight and go from LAX all the way to New York City, and they didn't have any food available and you brought nothing with you. A lot of people would freak out if they knew they were going to be in a plane for 5 hours without having anything to eat but water. But with somebody who starts practicing something like, and it's some version or some protocol of intermittent fasting, your body gets better at utilizing your own fat stores for energy. And the more metabolically flexible you are, the more that you can get into utilizing this prime energy source, which is fat. So you'll get hungry, but your hunger will be appropriate. And over time, you'll need less food to satisfy your hunger as your body becomes better at, let's say, making ketones from your body fat. If you did, let's say, a 16-8. So you went for 16 hours without food, you ate within an 8-hour window. Your body is producing ketones during that 16-hour. You'll get better at that, JJ. And so it's helping people to move from using just a primary sugar burning metabolism into a fat burning metabolism, and being able to be flexible with going back and forth. So for example, when people eat several times a day, your metabolism goes through different cycles of breaking down the carbs and turning it into blood sugar. And then your body will use that energy. It'll use the energy from the sugar first. And as soon as you start getting a hunger signal, a lot of times people will just start up again. They'll just start eating. When you have a fat burning metabolism, there may be a period of time where your body doesn't necessarily have all the enzymes to actually access your fat stores and to use your fats and turn those fats into an energy source. That is kind of maybe a rusty system. So some people, when they first get started with this, will feel they may not feel good. They may feel uncomfortable. They'll experience hunger, true hunger. And, a lot of people have a lot of fear about that. But over a period of time, and usually it takes about 2 weeks, this is what we found in our practice. If somebody was doing this maybe 1 day a week or 2 days a week, maybe even up to 3 days a week, it might take them 2 weeks before their body starts getting more comfortable with using their own body fat for energy. And you get more robust as you do it over time.
Well, you must have been reading my history and past recently, because I did fly back from Pennsylvania to LA, and I had stopped eating the night before. It was a pretty late night of eating. I was trying to get in all the extra Greek foods that I don't normally eat in before I
Oh,
left.
yeah.
So it was probably like an 8 o'clock, like I stopped eating at 8 o'clock Eastern time. And then I went to
Okay.
sleep, and I got up at 5 a.m. Eastern time to head to the airport to get on the plane to come back to Los Angeles. And I didn't get back to Los Angeles until I think it was around 12:30, 1 o'clock Pacific time. And then I didn't eat my first thing until 2 or 2:30 Pacific time. So
Right.
I had nothing with me on the plane. So I was that
Ah,
person you just explained, and I was fine. Now, of course, I also, I'm sure, was full of inflammation from 3 days of eating foods I don't normally eat. But I was absolutely, because I was done. I was so overeaten that I said I could not eat for a couple days and be just fine, because I'm so over. I'm like, I've eaten too much. I'm sure there's inflammation, and
you love every bit, but I know you're at the point where you were done.
I was done. Right. I hit my capacity. Normally I do one day and I'll do
Yeah.
5 days of 365 where I'm eating gluten and dairy in a
Hmm.
larger amount. I mean, I definitely gluten I don't have, but maybe 3 or 4 times in a year. And I had it for 3 full days. So I was definitely feeling the effects of that. But you brought up something, another one of those myths and fears that I think people have and possibly excuses. Let's dive into the science of someone who's diabetic and the idea that we've been taught also that we need to regulate our blood sugar. So can you speak to the blood sugar and those who are possibly either type 2 diabetes or even type 1 diabetes and wanting to see what they can do to heal that if some form of this is beneficial, if
Oh,
not?
yeah,
Yeah.
sure. Yeah, I've been doing actually a 5-week series downtown for a group of diabetics, and we have been teaching them about intermittent fasting. And one of the surprising benefits that so many of these clients have experienced, and just we're going into the 5th session this week. So, in the first 4 weeks, the first 4 sessions, that is, many patients were surprised at how they could go without eating, what I call the grazing. Diabetes, a lot of the diabetic educators teach people about eating smaller meals and then grazing, so that you might have 3 meals and then 3 snacks. Well, if you're going to practice intermittent fasting, you've got to give up one of those snacks. So for a lot of people, they gave up that evening snack, or they might have something at 9 o'clock. So they might have stopped eating at, let's say, 6 o'clock, and then not started eating again until like 8 o'clock the next morning. And so for sure, the first week and the second week, people felt a little uncomfortable with that. They feel hunger, but hunger is not a problem. And one of the things that is happening is that the body is signaling we want to start burning sugar. And the fat metabolism, think of yourself as like a Prius. You're maybe accustomed to always using gasoline, and now you're having to use electricity. So it's a little rusty. But by the third week, many of those people were not even needing to do 2 snacks a day. They were able to cut 2 snacks out. The evidence now with a low carb diet and using intermittent fasting is phenomenal. I mean, the benefits that people are getting, because they increase insulin sensitivity pretty quickly within 2 weeks. Your muscles are becoming much more sensitive to insulin, so you don't need as much JJ. So that's one benefit. Many diabetics can start reducing their insulin if they're on insulin, whether they're a type 1 or type 2. And then if they weren't on insulin, but they were using some kind of a medicine, many of them would need less by 3-4 weeks. And then for sure, many diabetics will find that they are losing fat. They're getting more efficient at using fat for energy. So that has its benefits. Your body is switching to fat burning, means that you're made a good transition. You're beginning cellular cleanup, and you're learning how to regenerate your body without having to just rely on sugar.
Okay, so now we've discussed why diabetics want to start looking at using these
Oh,
principles to
yes.
help heal. So, because
Hmm.
diabetics could possibly rule this out, well, I can't do that because I've been taught to eat every couple
Yeah,
of hours, right?
exactly.
Are
Yep,
there
you
any
got it.
are there any populations or that this isn't right for, or what about the whole talk about blood sugar? Are we creating blood sugar or energy from our fat then to replace what we're not getting through carbohydrate? Like, is there a danger in having low blood sugar?
I think there's, you may find there may be that occasional person who is so active when they're doing this that they could be dropping their blood sugars down to, let's say, 40 or 50, and ideally it's somewhere around 70 to 80. That may happen, but there's probably also going to be some other symptoms that you're going to have that would let I need to refeed. And when you get to what populations might be at risk for this, I would definitely say somebody who's trying to grow a baby. So somebody who's pregnant or even nursing, they need to have a steady supply of energy because they're feeding for two. So they may be able to do fasting, intermittent fasting, but they may also want to be listening to the body and to, recognize when they feel weak, particularly, let's say, for the pregnant woman who's very, very active. That could be somebody who maybe has to use some other methods. Like, for example, I check my blood sugars and I also check my ketones, and I do it probably several times a week. I'm not needing to do it. I'm not a diabetic, but diabetes runs in my family. So I am definitely somebody who's always trying to be in tune. And so sometimes I'll feel hunger, JJ, and I'm thinking, geez, I should not be this hungry. And I'll go and check and I'll find out, well, yeah, my blood sugars are 61. Okay, well, that makes sense. I understand now. So, I would probably refeed. But, a lot of times I feel hunger and my blood sugars are 90. So, you know what I mean? It's not always like it. Sometimes there's a refining, let's put it that way. There's a refining in terms of knowing your body and understanding your experience that you might have. But is there a risk? Not really. Even for pregnant and nursing women, they could still do this. They just might want to be more in tune.
Okay, well, that begs the question, why would a pregnant woman want to do this?
I've had women who are pregnant and they're using their pregnancy to perhaps be a little bit more, particularly like maybe in that first month, to lose a little bit of weight because they were overweight to begin with. Maybe they're 25, 30 pounds above their ideal body weight. So you could, with the work of a nutritionist, be able to be effective with dropping maybe 10 pounds over a 3-month period or a 2-month period, and still be able to support a very healthy baby. So I've had 2 women who have done this and were effective, but I think it's something that begs to work with a professional.
Yes, please, everyone listening, call Jeannie, nourishingwellness.com, and plan a session with her at least to set this up if that is you. And I'm sure that you can go more in depth at that time. So let's now go back to the benefits of intermittent fasting. The first reason why we want to do it probably is weight loss, but there are also stem cell effects, right? Stem cell regeneration and immunity boosting. And I know you listed so many things. Let's go over that.
Yeah, a couple things. Let's just talk about the brain. We'll start at the top of the body and work our way down. So there's definitely, when you're fasting, your body, let's say you do a 12-hour. So let's say you stop eating at 6, you're not going to eat again until 6 in the next morning. Or let's say you do even maybe a 14-hour. Your body's transitioning into this fasting state beyond just, using fat for energy. You're also beginning cellular cleanup. So we know that some people can start to increase what they call the autologous stem cells. Autologous stem cells are the circulating stem cells that are looking to clean up. So some people might actually, have what they call autophagy, which is the brain cleaning itself up. It's like flushing the waste out of the brain just by having that 12 to 14-hour rest. So, and then there's also inflammation that exist in the brain. So just giving the brain a rest, is allowing the brain to just kind of flush out the waste. And then you increase some of these neurotrophic factors. There's certain they call it brain-derived neurotrophic factor, which is just one of these many factors that increase when people are going through a period of a rest in the brain. And that is one that's associated with the decreased risk in Alzheimer's or cognitive decline or dementia. So yeah, these are some, physiological benefits. And then we can go through, but I think anytime we're giving a rest, the other place is the gut gets a nice break. And, we know that people will tend to get rid of better waste when they could through a period where they just had nothing to eat for 12 to 14 hours. So you're training your body to be more efficient at flushing its waste.
Okay. And I just want to remind everybody, because I know I mentioned weight loss and, that's while it's on the top of most people's minds when they start a program of some kind, that just because there's weight to lose doesn't mean, and this is a tool, intermittent fasting, but it has so many more health benefits. I wouldn't want you to think of it as a diet. And as Jeannie has mentioned in the beginning of the show, you also want to look at nutrient dense foods that are also low inflammatory foods, that are high quality foods. When you are eating, this isn't just a trick of doing a intermittent fasting and then eating crap when you do start to eat again. And it's funny, you mentioned about that hunger. My dad was told I asked you about a book from my dad, and we got him
Right.
the Grain Brain, and he did
Uh-huh.
read some of it. I think, I don't know if he finished it, but said he was trying to cut out some bread. Of course, that means for him 1 meal a day. So the other 2 meals a day still have bread, and he would be eating and grazing throughout the day because someone told him he was
Hypoglycemic. I remember that.
hypoglycemic. And my father had an incident where he fainted in the shower. So here's where I'm getting to like some of those risk factors. He fainted in the shower. Now he thought it was because he had low blood sugar, and he fainted in the shower. He hit his head on the counter. It knocked him out. And the paramedics came and they took him to the hospital. And this was right after they had seen you guys 2 years ago. And luckily, I think I kind of manifested some of this, because then, of course, they ran him through every test possible, right? And insurance covered all of it. And there was nothing wrong with him. And they
Yeah.
couldn't find anything. And so when it came down to it, he thought maybe he had low blood sugar. But after he had not eaten for 6 or 8 hours, his blood sugar was still 107. I said, Dad,
Yes. Yes.
you are not hypoglycemic. You do not need to be eating every couple of hours. You still and so I think, again, we get into that habit, and sometimes that hunger isn't physiological, it's emotional or it's
Absolutely.
habitual. And so we end up getting into that cycle. So I just want to keep that in mind. If those of you, if you're so focused on the lack and deprivation of being on intermittent fasting, you might be mistaking your anxiety for hunger.
I want to really speak to that. That is a really powerful point, because I think a lot of people, I just talked about these physical benefits, but I really feel like the psychological benefit is huge, because we're such a culture that, again, we have access to food anytime, and food is, we use it when we're bored, or when we're, when we want a distraction or whatever. So all of a sudden getting in touch with your hunger and learning the difference between, what I would call body hunger and mental hunger, I think it's a big benefit. And when people focus on learning not to fear that they're in hunger, because I have several patients who shared with me, oh my God, I was so anxious. I couldn't figure out how to calm myself down, and I had to eat. They just couldn't quite get through the interval. So learning not to fear, learning to just, go and ride through the experience, finding what you come up against, and then just respecting the joy and privilege when you get to finally refeed, gives you a chance to learn more about who you are. So I think that can be a very powerful aspect of intermittent fasting. And what the research is showing, JJ, with people who are doing it, is that intermittent fasting has been more effective for helping people to lose fat over time. So that it's making it a little bit easier, particularly for, like, let's say the menopausal woman who really struggles with the hormonal changes that their body is going through, to maybe achieve a lower body fats. I'm not saying it's easier. It's definitely, it can be much more challenging than conventional dieting, but conventional dieting, meaning, you're just cutting back on your calories and you're eating, whenever you care for, is not necessarily giving the benefits for the perimenopausal and the menopausal woman. So I know I have that data I could pull up. And I think that's, maybe a benefit for some of your listeners that are out there, if they're looking for a way to not only manage their hunger and get more comfortable with hunger, but also looking for a way that they could be more effective at losing fat. And I found that for myself. I mean, I did this intermittent fasting over a 2-year period. And when I started, I was like 138, and now I'm down to 128. But more importantly, my body fat went from 21 down to 14.6%. And I don't do it all the time, but I had tried just cutting back on calories, let's say 4 or 5 years ago, and I just was never, ever getting anywhere with my weight. And so I think, for me personally, but also for some of my patients who have been struggling with body fat changes post-menopausal, this could be a powerful tool to incorporate.
Well, let's not forget you started doing triathlons. So that definitely has affected your body fat composition as well. Because 2 years ago, I don't think you'd done some swimming, but you weren't doing triathlons at the pace that you're doing them now.
Sure. I mean, there's no doubt. I mean, I'm doing probably a little more exercise, but I've always exercised 6 days, 6 days a week. So that hasn't changed, but I might be doing a little bit more, but still the body fat was staying pretty consistent at 21%, even when I was I did triathlons several years ago. So it's just I think, again, it can be a technique or a tool for women who are feeling stuck. And I think it's a tool for men too. So the men that are listening, don't think you're left out. But my experience has been more with working with women. And and I think, anybody who's interested in getting started with using this as a technique, I think one of the first things you want to think about is, what's your why? Why do you want to do this? Because it'll help you, particularly when you're being challenged around the hunger and challenged around, and you know how hunger is, JJ. When you are on that plane coming back from Pennsylvania, did you go through a stage of hunger on that 5-hour flight back?
I thought to myself at one point I would eat if I had something, but I recognized I didn't need to eat. I was starting to get hungry when I was waiting for my bags to come down. So again, we're talking about it's probably now 12:30, 1 o'clock. It's definitely 1 o'clock Pacific time. So we're now at 4 o'clock Eastern time, and I stopped eating at 8 p.m. the night before. So, and I knew that I was still going to have to come home and make something. So I definitely was starting to feel a little bit of hunger, but it really wasn't until I got off my butt and started to move my muscles more that I felt a little bit more of a pang of hunger.
Yeah, and the thing about hunger to realize is that when it's true hunger, many people will have different symptoms for that. So I'm thinking about for your dad, he may have been more mental hunger, but even sometimes people will get a little shaky when they have hunger. And so they get shaky, or they might get sweaty palms. It's like the body is trying to alert us that we need to eat. Some people will get kind of a weird sensation in the back of their throat. So everybody doesn't experience hunger in the same way. So that's number one. Start paying attention to what are your signs of hunger. I know for me, sometimes it can be just this pulling, like my belly button is being pulled in. And one of the things that is helpful is to know that it's usually something that's going to last maybe 15, maybe 20 minutes, and then it's going to go away. So if you can distract yourself, if you can drink some cold water with lemon, or having a hot tea, there are things that you can do that will help you be more effective during the fasted state. I know most people who are intermittent fasting will, drink some black coffee or tea or herbal tea or lemon water. Anything like that can be helpful just to get you through. So one glass of water oftentimes can give you that feeling of fullness, and that will suppress that hunger symptom. Getting out and walking. I mean, this morning I did an hour swim in the ocean, and I was hungry before I got started. And surprisingly, I got so busy just thinking about the waves and trying to keep my head above water that I actually completely forgot about it when I got out of the water. I wasn't hungry anymore. So most hunger doesn't last more than 15, 20, maybe 25, 30 minutes at the most.
Let's talk about doing it correctly or right, or what's the
Sure.
detriment? Because, most of us want to do it in the morning and, count because we're going to sleep at night, take advantage of that whole sleep thing.
Yes.
And all of that, and get up and, because I have coffee, but I never do black coffee, and I never will do black coffee. So let's talk about what can I put in my coffee? Can I do a bulletproof coffee without sugar?
Absolutely. A lot of it depends on what your goals are. So for example, the person who's really interested in I want to get more comfortable with using fat for energy, I'm interested in losing body fat, then a bulletproof coffee is great, because if you're using butter or if you're using whipping cream, there is no carbohydrates in that. So you're not going to stimulate an insulin response. As soon as you start putting in like 5 calories of carbohydrate, your body is starting to use insulin. So you're turning off that benefit. But if you were just, if you're doing it for that purpose, then you could drink a bulletproof coffee. You could have a green tea. You could have green or black tea with MCT oil in it, or some kind of a fat like butter, and you'd be fine. However, if you're interested in improving cognitive function, you're looking at, improving your brain so that you're utilizing your brain better, then you might want to skip the butter, skip the cream, and just simply use like a little bit of MCT oil would be helpful, because MCT is a medium chain fat, so it doesn't require any digestion. So your body's not going to be stimulating any enzymes like you would be when you're taking your bulletproof. And when you're not using those pathways, your brain is able to go ahead and stay effective. That's the reason why that, I think they call it brain octane oil, sometimes got that name, because it's coconut oil, but it's 2/3 MCT by volume. So it eliminates any kind of digestion or enzyme need.
Could we just use coconut oil?
You can use coconut oil. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a medium chain fat that's found in coconut oil. So those oils don't require, I mean, they're able to be broken down and utilized by the brain, but also utilized by the body within just a few minutes. Gets right into the system quite quickly, particularly if you're giving it in a delivery system like a hot drink.
We're going to continue this conversation because obviously I don't know what I was thinking trying to get it under an hour because once we get started, it's just all kinds of stuff that I want to know about, other people want to know about, and you have plenty of information to teach for days and months and years, obviously 40 of them. So why don't you tell everybody how to find out more information about you? And we're going to have Jeannie back on the show. Of course, I want to hear from you guys what you liked about today's show, what you want to know more about, and we can even do some other shows around some of those questions, and I can answer some of them as well. But Jeannie, why don't you tell us how people can get a hold of you and how you can work with them?
So I'm the nutrition director at the Nourishing Wellness Medical Center in Redondo Beach. And if you go on to our website, www.nourishingwellness.com, you can send me a message. And JJ, for any of your listeners today, I have a PDF on intermittent fasting. It's a 2-page that goes into pretty much everything we've talked about, some of the benefits, some recommendations, what you can do in the fasted state in terms of eating. So I'm glad to go ahead and pass that on to you, and you can make it available to your listeners.
Perfect. So let's make that a download that you can get at jjflizanes.com/fasting. jjflizanes.com/fasting. And I will also put Jeannie's information in there as well. You can sign up and we will get you that 2-page list on intermittent fasting. And maybe we'll even hold a group where we can all be doing it together and support each other. I'm doing it, but I'm cheating a little. And I know that, and I'm okay with that. but I wanted to just sort of get a little more clarity for everybody else who's listening.
Sure. And there's no right or wrong. I think it's just good to recognize that there's lots of different ways to do this. So, don't be so hard on yourself. I mean, even if you're doing an 8-hour fast, I mean, that's better than the average American who's, eating, particularly around after dinner. That's a common time where many people are just excessively snacking. So just even doing that is a big step forward. So just know that, there's lots of different ways to do this. And you'll see that when you get this handout. Okay?
Excellent. All right, Jeannie, we'll be back.
Bye, everyone. Have a great day.